and author of Thriving After Trauma. Shari, you're one of our favorite guests, so thank you for coming on with us and talking about a pretty deep, dark topic, but really important. And I guess I want to start right away just by going into the questions, talking about Jane and Cassie's testimony, specifically theirs. I want to talk about Mia too, but Jane and Cassie, they had kind of similar experiences with these freak offs. Is it a good thing to show a pattern, like from the government's perspective?
I think it's a great thing because what it shows the jury is this is something that is happening over and over. So I think it makes the witnesses more credible. Their stories are lining up. And I think the jury can sit there and think it's not just one person who's reporting this. There's two, three, I don't know how many witnesses the state will have by the end of the trial. But I think it's really actually affirming for the jury. If they're questioning anything about what they're hearing, they're going to go back and read the transcripts and go, yeah, we heard this before, we heard this before, we heard this over and over.
And it is interesting to hear the pattern, not only of this alleged abuse, but also the relationships prior to it, because we heard from Cassie and recently Jane about the early parts of the relationship, you know, the fun stuff, the falling in love and being vulnerable with each other and the exciting parts of a new relationship. And you and I were actually talking about this before the interview and we stopped because I was like, I want to hear your answer on camera. We have to wait a second. But so talking about that, Jane saying, you know, he was very vulnerable with me and open to me. To me, I was hearing potentially like grooming in a way. What do you make of all of that?
It's absolutely grooming. And I think it's so important for the jury to hear this part of their connection with him because it's so common. People who stay in relationships where there's any type of abuse don't report being abused all the time. The grooming that comes with it, the love bombing, the vulnerability that someone like Sean Combs is showing. This is also common, and it's part of what gets people sucked in, especially younger people. And again, in these cases, we don't know anything about their backstory, but we don't know if Cassie, Jane, Mia, we don't know if they come from a place where they felt unloved, if they had issues with their parents. So people with a history of abandonment or any type of trauma, they're even more likely to fall prey to these types of behaviors.
Get ready to embrace luxury with the fine.
And there have been some questions on cross exam to these women. Why did it take you so long to come forward? If these things were so bad, why did you keep going back? Why did you wait for Cassie? Why did you wait to file that civil lawsuit until years later? Or other women, you know, what was your motive in all of this, Mia, with the payout? And I do, just to play devil's advocate with all of this, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like for somebody who's gone through sexual trauma or really any, it takes time to be able to vocalize that or come forward. Could that be a reason why they didn't say stop immediately?
It can take people years to realize that they're being abused by someone that they're also in a loving, intimate relationship with. So this question comes up over and over. I work with so many clients who have talked to me about waiting 5, 10, 20 years. I had one client who was very young when she started a relationship with someone, and I was seeing her in therapy while she was allegedly being raped by her boyfriend. I knew her for 4 years before she sat in my office one day and she asked me, can you be assaulted or raped by your own boyfriend? So I think that the importance of this trial is that the world is learning more about not why does it take you so long to come forward, but what does it take for someone to actually fully understand and acknowledge and know that they are in a relationship where they are being abused. It's so complicated when it's with somebody that you're intimately connected to.
And something also that's kind of complicated in this is if we're putting Cassie and Jane together, because it seems as though they were in relationships, and we'll talk about me in a second. But Cassie and Jane are in these relationships with Diddy for multiple years. And when they get on the stand, they say, yes, I did call up and look for escorts. Yes, I did participate in these freak offs. Or Cassie said, I got lube or I got baby oil. Like I went and did these things. However, I did them because I felt like I had to. And I think that's the fine line where the defense is going to say, well, wait, you called up that escort, or we have these texts here where you said, oh, I can't wait to have a freak off, or I can't wait to go to the hotel. But what do you make of that from these women's perspective? If they were, I mean, they're alleging they're survivors of all of this. Why would they then say, yeah, I wanted to participate?
Yeah, I mean, you just said the word. Part of why they're engaging in these acts and making the choices that they're making is because they are trying to survive. People who are in relationships where they're being abused, trafficked, they'll do anything that they can to keep the abuser happy. They'll do anything they can to avoid another situation where they're going to be physically harmed, emotionally harmed, sexually abused. So the thing that we're not really hearing about in the trial is all the confusion and the mixed feelings that someone has when they're in a relationship where they're being asked to do something where part of them is going to think there's no way I'm going to do that. But then there's another part of them that will think, well, but if I do this for him, maybe he won't X, Y, and Z. Maybe he'll still pay my rent. Maybe he'll still tell me that he loves me. People going through these situations, they don't just make these choices and say, well, I was okay with doing that. Usually what happens, and we're not hearing about this either in the trial, after Cassie sent a text saying, I can't wait to have another freak off, what could have happened is after that, she could have thought, what was I thinking? I can't believe that I just did that. Now I'm really going to be screwed. So these are the things that we're not hearing. These are things that I hear in therapy when somebody's going back and working through whatever trauma they experienced.
And texts are hard because I could write something like, yeah, I'm so excited. I could text that and they
Yeah.
could bring it up in court. But then they ask me and I'm like, no, I was being polite. I wasn't actually excited to go do my taxes or, whatever it is. So that is kind of tricky. And I mean, in relationships, this is more at a basic level, but we all make concessions. Like if your boyfriend wants to watch this movie you don't want to watch, sometimes you say, oh yeah, I'd love to do it. And you do it, even though you don't want to. So
Yep.
that's at a more, it's a more basic level, but I think it's so messy. The lines get so blurry in all of this. And also, I want to talk about this too. I had this part written down. The intercontinental video is super important evidence. And it kind of goes both ways because we see this violence that the defense admits P. Diddy was physically assaulting Cassie. They say it was domestic violence, but they say it doesn't prove sex trafficking. However, the government says it does because Cassie left a freak off early, and this is the result of what happened after she left. She was beat. So what do you think of that? What side are you on?
I would say I can understand why people are confused. I can definitely see the defense trying to undercut the video and say this is just an act of violence or domestic abuse. But if he's attacking her because she no longer wants to participate in an event or a freak off where people are flown in from different countries or different states and she's being forced to have sex with people that she doesn't want to have sex with, that is trafficking. I don't know how to define it legally, but it's very clear in the testimony that the result of this beating was her saying, I don't want to do this anymore. She was trying to get the heck out of there. She was trying to escape. And I think that we don't see that in the video. We can't hear what she's saying, but we heard it on the stand.
And I know we've talked a lot about Cassie and Jane because their relationships were, they were in relationships with P. Diddy. However, Mia, I want to talk about her now because she was an employee, which is a completely different relationship. That's like, your boss and you're the employee. So what do you feel about Mia's testimony?
I think her testimony is extremely powerful. And what it shows the jury is that anybody that he had power over, he felt entitled or he felt like he could do whatever he wanted to do to make them give him what he wants. So I think it's another example of predatory like behavior. This is not just a man who allegedly is abusing his girlfriends, but he's abusing, threatening pretty much anybody that works for him or that he feels he has power over. So I think that her testimony just strengthens the case.
And there's a power dynamic in all of these, right? Like Jane is a single mother who he's helping her pay the rent. Cassie is a young woman, I believe 17 years younger, just coming up in the music industry. He's this music giant. Then for Mia, she's in her early 20s, and we all remember wanting to get ahead in her early 20s. She said she didn't sleep for a day. You know, she's just like really busting her butt to like be a good worker. And now there's this power imbalance. And something with Mia's testimony that really stood out to me is she was talking about these alleged incidents of assault. And she said she froze. She didn't verbally say stop or no. She just froze. And I want to ask you about this because we talk about fight, flight, or freeze, but freeze is a response that people have, right?
Yeah. It's a response that someone has when they're feeling like they're in imminent danger. And honestly, I don't really know anything about her past, but when I think about what she's saying, this might not have been the first time where she felt physically violated, sexually violated. So once somebody's experienced some type of trauma, that's abuse, freezing is like an automatic response. And I will say that, and I'm hoping that the expert talked about this with the jury, but when someone freezes and they can't speak, that is not consent. She is not consenting. You don't have to say the word no to not consent to an act that's being done to you. So I think what it's showing the jury, and hopefully, again, they get to go back and read Dr. Hughes' testimony. Her freezing in that moment, she's basically letting herself and the jury know that she knew she was about to get hurt really badly. And that's how she survived that particular trauma.
And I know there have been some critics about all of this who are like, okay, well, you didn't do anything. You didn't say no. You didn't whatever. And I feel like it's so easy to be a critic in the back seat saying like, why didn't you do this? Whereas, I mean, like for me, for example, I'm very outspoken. I'm very loud. I'm like, if I got in an instance, I know what I would say. But I have been in an instance where I froze, and that's out of character for me, but it catches you off guard. And I just think for all of our viewers out there, male and female, it's so important to talk about how this is normal. This is something that happens to people. It's not that you're bad or reacting in the wrong way. I feel so passionately about that. I know that you do too. And I kind of want to ask some general questions about all of this too, because I have to wonder what's going on with all of these women during all of this. So for them to be on the stand and to testify in front of their alleged abuser, what does that do to a person?
I mean, depending on their situation, it can completely unravel them. My concern for people when they get up and they testify is what kind of support do they have after they've stepped down? Are they having flashbacks? I would imagine that they're feeling so much shame. You know, one of the things that I'm noticing when you see the pictures of the witnesses, they're looking down. You have, I think this is Jane. She's got the one side of her hair kind of covering her face because I think she's trying to shield herself from having to look at Sean Combs. I mean, I've worked with hundreds of survivors who never sat in the room with their abuser after because they were too afraid. Talking in a public setting where you're being subjected to scrutiny, where you're being victim shamed, it's devastating. So I think that we may find out, you know, months, years after the trial, what happened to all of these witnesses. We may find out more about the impact of testifying. It takes a lot of courage to tell anyone, even your best friend, that you're being abused. So the fact that they're sitting up there, and I can tell you that probably they're having flashbacks while they're sitting on the stand. I would imagine that they're feeling all kinds of things in their body. As soon as they see any type of disapproval, at times I know Sean Combs is nodding his head, that these are gestures that can be very intimidating and threatening. So it's also possible that they're sitting on the stand going, well, maybe I shouldn't be saying that, or maybe I'm making it up. Maybe I'm making a big deal out of nothing. So basically every single defense mechanism that a survivor will feel when they're in therapy talking about trauma that happened in the past, I would imagine that all that is happening while they're sitting on the stand, especially during the cross-exam.
Your hair has more potential than you think. Nutrafol gives your body what you need to
The cross exam has got to be so hard because you really have to double down on your story. And I know me, I can gaslight myself and be like, wait, did that actually happen? Or like, I'm pretty sure it did, but like, did it, And you kind of get in your own head. And so I wonder how, and I guess I'm asking you, how prosecutors prepare these survivors, not only for the direct, like we're going to be talking about some pretty tough stuff, but the cross exam too, which is going to be maybe even tougher.
Yeah, I think it depends. I've worked on different cases, and one of the things that I noticed was the trauma informed attorneys, when we're going to go to trial for a case that's similar to this, they will work with the witnesses on keeping themselves grounded, on things they can say to themselves while they're sitting on the stand. They'll say things like, don't look at the, the defendant, just look at me. They'll say things like, if you need to take a break, make sure you let us know. We could take a break at any point. I mean, I've sat in court with where judges have said to witnesses when they start to get really emotional, do you need a minute? There are some lawyers who maybe aren't as well informed about what it's like to speak after surviving these types of traumas. So there may be some witnesses that are completely unprepared and have no idea what's about to happen. So I think it's case by case. I'm imagining the prep for this particular trial was very intense, and I'm hoping that the witnesses have somebody sitting in the courtroom that they can look at, just to know that they're not by themselves as they're sitting in a room feeling picked apart and judged and probably scared to death.
I think it's really a testament to their strength to come forward and talk about these really intense things, especially on a national scale. So there's so much happening here. But Shari Botwin, thank you for coming on and talking with us, because this is such an intense, heavy topic, but I think it's really important. So thank you for coming on Scandal with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me.